Once upon a time, in a quiet town, there was a young boy named Liam Glowingstar. Liam was a bright, curious soul with a heart full of dreams balloon. His parents, wanting the best for him, decided to send him to St. Gregory's Academy, an elite all-boys boarding school known for its strict discipline and academic excellence. At first, Liam was excited. The grand buildings, the lush green fields, and the promise of new friends filled him with hope rainbow. But little did he know, the shadows of the academy held secrets darker than he could ever imagine. New moon. Liam quickly made friends with a group of boys in his dorm. They laughed, played, and studied together, and for a while, everything seemed perfect performing arts. But there was one boy, Ethan Sunglasses, who always seemed to linger a little too close. Ethan was older, charismatic, and had a way of making Liam feel special until it wasn't special anymore. One night, as the moon cast eerie shadows across the dormitory, Ethan crept into Liam's bed. He whispered lies into Liam's ear, telling him this was normal for boys their age. Confused and scared, Liam didn't know what to do. He felt trapped, like a bird in a cage bird-locked. As the weeks turned into months, Liam began to change. The once cheerful boy became quiet and withdrawn. He avoided eye contact, and his grades started to slip. The other boys noticed, but no one said a word. The culture of silence at St. Gregory's was stronger than any bond of friendship zipper-mouth face. Liam's heart was torn. He didn't understand what was happening to him. He felt broken, like a puzzle missing its most important piece. And then, one day, he caught himself staring at another boy in the shower. His stomach churned with guilt and confusion. Was this who he was now? Was this what Ethan had turned him into? Shower droplet. Liam's mind became a battlefield. He hated Ethan for what he had done, but he also hated himself for not being able to stop it. He started to question everything, his identity, his worth, even his future. The once bright dreams of becoming an artist palette now felt like distant memories, buried under layers of shame and fear. One evening, as he sat by the window watching the rain pour down cloud with rain, Liam made a decision. He couldn't keep living like this. He had to tell someone. But who would believe him? And even if they did, what would happen next? Clutching a crumpled piece of paper in his trembling hands. It was a letter he had started writing to his parents a dozen times, but could never finish. How could he explain the unexplainable? How could he tell them that the school they thought was his salvation had become his prison? Fountain penned, broken heart. Every word felt like a betrayal of their trust, of the future they had envisioned for him. But the weight of his silence was crushing him. He could barely breathe under the pressure of his own thoughts. The walls of the dormitory seemed to close in, the shadows stretching longer and darker with each passing night new moon. One day, during a particularly grueling math class, Liam noticed something unusual. His teacher, Mr. Thompson Adult School, paused mid-lecture and looked directly at him. It wasn't the usual glance of frustration or disappointment Liam had grown accustomed to. It was softer, almost concerned. After class, Mr. Thompson asked Liam to stay behind. The room emptied, and the silence between them was heavy. Finally, Mr. Thompson spoke. "Liam, I've noticed you've been different lately. Is everything okay? Speaking head?" Liam's throat tightened. He wanted to scream, to cry, to tell the truth. But the words stuck in his chest like a stone. He managed a weak nod, but his eyes betrayed him, filling with tears he couldn't hold back. Mr. Thompson hesitated, then placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." Handshake. It was the first time in months Liam felt seen. But could he trust him? Could he trust anyone? That night, Ethan cornered Liam in the hallway. His usual charm was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. "I heard you stayed behind with Thompson," Ethan sneered. "What did you tell him?" Liam's heart raced. He shook his head, muttering, "Nothing." But Ethan wasn't convinced. He leaned in closer, his breath hot against Liam's ear. "You better keep your mouth shut, or things will get worse for you. You don't want that, do you?" The threat hung in the air like a guillotine. Liam felt the familiar grip of fear tightening around him. But this time, something inside him stirred, a tiny spark of defiance. He wasn't sure where it came from, but it was there, flickering weakly in the darkness. Sparkles. The next morning, Liam found himself standing outside Mr. Thompson's office. His hand hovered over the door, trembling. He could still hear Ethan's voice in his head, warning him to stay silent. But he also remembered the kindness in Mr. Thompson's eyes, the offer of help. Taking a deep breath, Liam knocked. The door opened, and Mr. Thompson's face appeared, surprised but welcoming. "Liam? What brings you here?" Door. Liam opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His knees felt weak, and his vision blurred with tears. Mr. Thompson quickly guided him to a chair, closing the door behind them. "Take your time," he said softly. "I'm listening, Chair." For the first time, Liam felt the walls around his heart begin to crack. But would he be able to break them down completely? And if he did, what would happen next? Liam sat in Mr. Thompson's office, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of a clock on the wall. He stared at the floor, unable to meet his teacher's gaze. Mr. Thompson waited patiently, his presence calm and steady, like an anchor in the storm raging inside Liam. "Hourglass not done." Finally, Liam whispered, "I don't know where to start." His voice was so soft it was almost inaudible, but it was enough. Mr. Thompson leaned forward slightly, his expression gentle but serious. "Start wherever feels right," he said. "I'm here to listen, not to judge." Old key. Liam took a shaky breath. The words came slowly at first, like drops of water from a cracked dam. He told Mr. Thompson about Ethan, how it started with small, seemingly innocent gestures, how it escalated into something Liam couldn't control or understand. He spoke about the shame, the confusion, the fear that had become his constant companions. Waterwave. As he spoke, the dam inside him began to break. Tears streamed down his face, but for the first time, they felt like a release rather than a burden. Mr. Thompson listened without interruption, his face a mask of quiet concern. When Liam finally finished, the room felt heavier, as if the air itself had absorbed the weight of his confession. Droplet. Mr. Thompson sat back, his expression thoughtful. "Liam," he said carefully, "what you've been through is not your fault. You've been incredibly brave to share this with me." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But we need to take steps to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Are you willing to let me help you?" Handshake. Liam's heart raced. Help sounded like a lifeline, but it also meant exposing the truth, something Ethan had warned him against. He thought about the other boys in the dorm, the ones who might be suffering in silence just like him. He thought about his parents, who had sent him here with so much hope. Could he really do this? Could he risk everything? Thought balloon. "What will happen to me?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "Will everyone know?" Mr. Thompson shook his head. "Your safety and privacy are my top priorities. We'll handle this carefully, but I need your permission to take the next steps." Shield. Liam hesitated. The spark of defiance he had felt earlier flickered again, stronger this time. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he whispered. "I trust you." The days that followed were a blur. Mr. Thompson reported the incident to the school administration, and an investigation was quietly launched. Ethan was removed from the dormitory, but rumors began to swirl. The other boys whispered in the hallways, casting sideways glances at Liam. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with something that felt like pity. Shushing face. Liam felt exposed, as if his deepest wounds were on display for everyone to see. He avoided the common areas, spending most of his time in the library or his room. But even there, he couldn't escape the weight of what had happened. The guilt, the shame, the fear, it all followed him like a shadow. Books. One night, as he lay in bed, he heard a soft knock on his door. It was Marcus, one of the boys from his dorm. "Hey," Marcus said awkwardly. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything, door." Liam didn't know how to respond. Was Marcus sorry for what had happened, or for not noticing? Or was he just saying what he thought Liam wanted to hear? Before Liam could say anything, Marcus added, "You're not alone, you know. We're here for you. Handshake." The words were kind, but they felt hollow. Liam nodded, forcing a small smile. "Thanks," he said, but inside, he wondered if anyone could truly understand what he was going through. A week later, Liam finally finished the letter to his parents. He poured his heart into it, telling them everything, the good, the bad, and the unbearable. He sealed the envelope with trembling hands and dropped it in the mailbox, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. Postbox. What would they say? Would they blame him? Would they blame themselves? The questions haunted him as he waited for a response. In the meantime, he tried to focus on his studies, on his art, on anything that could distract him from the storm inside his mind. Artist's palette. But the storm was far from over. Ethan's absence had left a void, and Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was waiting to fill it. He began to notice subtle changes in the way some of the other boys looked at him, the way they whispered when he walked by. Was it his imagination, or was there something darker brewing beneath the surface?